Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 2 p.m. and we will start our meeting. My name is Susanna Karras. I'm a Director of Licensing at the Electrical Safety Authority. It is my distinct pleasure to, on behalf of the Electrical Safety Authority, to welcome you to the 14th Annual License Holder Meeting. Being mindful of your time and busy schedules, we aim to make this meeting informative and, what's important, brief. So without further delay, I would like to introduce Josie Rzetic, Chief Regulatory Officer and General Counsel at ESA. Welcome, Josie.
Good afternoon and welcome on behalf of ESA's executive team and board to the Electrical Safety Authority's first ever virtual license holder meeting. Thank you so much for joining us. Due to public health concerns, we cannot gather in person. However, we've created an engaging online version of our license holder meeting instead, and I'm very, very proud to kick it off. I'd like to acknowledge first the presence of some of our board members, Dale McDonald, Adele Mallow, and Walter Panic. Also our CEO and President, David Cawley, as well as some of our executive team members, Earl Davison, Kelly Irwin, and Kevin Greer are all in attendance. We also welcome staff from the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services, as well as ESA staff who are in attendance. I've attended license holder meetings in past years, and I'm always delighted to meet so many of you in person. I miss that personal interaction this year, but what I think this event does for us instead is demonstrate how resilient we all are. LECs have certainly demonstrated resiliency throughout the pandemic by continuing to service their customers and doing good work that's electrically safe while also adhering to all of the public health and safety guidelines. I'd like to thank and acknowledge the outstanding work of master electricians and LECs who continue to provide high quality, professional electrical services to the public in these unprecedented times. I'd also like to extend special thanks from myself, ESA's executive team, and our board to the Ecra Advisory Council and the Contractor Advisory Council for their valuable insights and contributions throughout the year. Both Ecra and COAC represent key stakeholders who work with us in support of the sector and electrical safety. I look forward to hearing from Cameron Hahn, Vice Chair of Ecra, later in the program, and Cameron will highlight the key activities of Ecra over the past year. In the face of the COVID-19 pandemic, ESA has continued to build relationships and collaborate with all of you and our other safety partners, just in a different way. We've continued to maintain a robust safety culture for our sector and for the people of Ontario, while adhering to public health and safety measures that will get all of us through the pandemic together. Since we last got together at the license holder meeting last November, ESA has undertaken a number of new and exciting licensing initiatives. Susanna Karras, who you just met, who's ESA's new Director of Licensing, will be talking to you later about these. Susanna's been a champion for the licensing group over the past year, and particularly a champion for digitization tools, like virtual proctoring for ME exams and online license renewal, both of which will reduce administrative burden for LECs. We're also launching a new licensing plan based on your input and feedback from Ecra, OEL, and ECAO. Thank you all so much for your valuable contributions to this plan, which we believe will bring value to LECs. In addition, as I'm sure you're all aware, we introduced risk-based oversight in July. This helps us to focus on the highest risk installation and also helps reduce burden on Ontario business. You'll be hearing more about RBO later in the meeting from Senior Inspector Will Barrett. At the recent ESA Safety Awards event on September 24th, I was honored to introduce a new category, the Licensed Electrical Contractor Recognition Award. The award was created this year in order to recognize the extraordinary work of LECs and your contribution to our sector's safety culture. This year, we recognized 2 LECs who demonstrated their ability to exceed customer needs. Their common mission is about safety and service delivery, but these 2 LECs are very different. One is a global construction company, Acon Mining Construction Services, a division of Acon Construction Group, and the other is a locally run family business, Kearney Electric Limited. Despite the difference, both are community introduce Cameron Hahn, who is an LEC, a master electrician on the OEL board of directors. Cameron's participation on the Master Examination Committee for 10 years and on Ecra for the past 3 years. And speaking personally, it's always a pleasure to work with Cam. So welcome to the meeting, Cam.
Thank you, Josie. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. As I'm not sure you are all aware, this is the first time we've held a license holder meeting virtually. So this is a new one for everyone. And I'd like to thank everyone for participating on behalf of the Ecra. I hope it has given a greater number of you the opportunity to attend the meeting. I would also like to acknowledge the work of the master electrician, the licensed electrical contractor who continue to provide the same quality of professional electrical services to the public in these times. My name is Cameron Hahn. I am a master electrician, licensed electrical contractor, and vice chair of the Electrical Contractor Registry Agency Advisory Council. It is known in short as the Ecra Advisory Council. I represent the Ontario Electrical League, is the people who designated me to be part of this group. I'd like to take a moment and introduce the Ecra Advisory Council and recap the council's roles for those who may not be familiar with it. And I apologize for any mispronunciation. Vince de Gasperi, he's representing the Utility Contractors Association of Ontario. We got Larry Allison representing the ESA Consumer Advisory Council. Steve Dalgettis, he's representing the Ontario Electrical League. Leo Grillette, he's appointed by ESA. There's Joe Kirby, he's a LEC and he's the current chair of the Ecra, and he's also representing Electrical Contractors Association of Ontario. We have Matthew Aston, he's representing the Association of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario. Larry Shaver, LEC, representing the Electrical Contractors Association of Ontario. Brian Smith, appointed by ESA, and we have Catherine A. Taylor, appointed by Ecra AC, representing the community at large. With this diverse group of people, I feel we tick all the boxes to successfully complete our meetings. Ecra meets about 5 times a year. The Ecra Advisory Council forms part of the governance structure for provincial licensing. The Advisory Council makes recommendations to ESA Regulatory Affairs Committee on matters related to licensing of electrical contractors, master electricians, and designated master electricians. It is also the responsibility for establishing the Masters Examining Committee and oversees the administration of the Master's Electrician License Exam. We work closely with ESA senior management, and the last year we have provided insight and advice on recommended activities and initiatives to include ESA's licensing department plan, provide advice on ESA's business plan and compliance and enforcement initiatives, represented Ecra Advisory Council at the ESA Board of Directors meeting. We provide feedback on LEC marketing campaigns. We also provide feedback to the recent launch of risk-based oversight of wiring installations. We also keep ESA aware of contractor licensing issues from the field. So this council is most effective when we know the issues that are important to you. The council will continue to be open and transparent with you, ESA, and we will continue to post council meetings minutes of the meeting, of the ESA on esasafe.com. We'd like to hear your thoughts on the Ecra Advisory Council work. And if you have any questions, I encourage you to send a line to the licensing department. And if you could flip that next slide, it shows the website, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Cam. For my presentation, before my presentation, I would like to also acknowledge the presence of our board member, Annette Bergeron, in addition to other board members mentioned. Thank you very much. As mentioned earlier, and I know we've said this several times, this is a first of a kind virtual meeting of the license holders. It also happens to be my first year welcoming you in this capacity as Director of Licensing, as Josie mentioned. I am excited about the reports we have to share with you and the information and questions we received. Before I begin my presentation and go over the slides, I would like to say two things. Number one, I would like to take a moment to say personal thank you to you, license holders. Ontarians place a lot of trust in you to ensure that their homes and their families are safe from electrical harm. So thank you for the work that you do every day to ensure electrical safety in Ontario. While you're looking at the agenda, I would like to remind you to submit your questions through Q&A. Given the time limitation, we may not be able to address them all. However, I can promise that we will collect them, review them, and we'll select a few to address in our next plugged in edition. So stay tuned. I'm also pleased to announce that similar to previous years, we will be holding tech question and answer session where technical advisors will answer your questions submitted as part of the registration process. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, 2020 has been a challenging year for everyone, for all of us. At Licensing Department, our focus has been on continued delivery of important licensing functions while working to mitigate the risk of global pandemic on our employees, license holders, stakeholders, and the public. None of this work would have been possible without the incredible support of the Licensing Department team. You know many of them, you've dealt with many of them, but I'd like to acknowledge my team here at this meeting. Shanna Hall, Licensing Advisor, Scott Eason, Project Specialist, Cynthia McGill, Enforcement Coordinator, Kelly Claremont, Compliance and Complaints Coordinator. And I'd like to also acknowledge our wonderful customer service team, Chantel Madison, Samantha Banks, Jan Benka, Jody Solomon, Beth Toms, Diana Toms, and Jennifer Milne. Thank you very much personally from me for your hard work and dedication over the last year. Next slide, please. In terms of the year in review, let me share some of the highlights of the past activities that we have undertaken. We've been hard at work at Licensing Department, processing renewals, new registrations, arranging master electrician exams, answering calls, and supporting you, license holders, with your questions and concerns. As you can see, the numbers paint a great picture of the results of our work over the last year. Next slide, please. Our complaints and compliance staff has been processing reports and issuing correspondence to ensure a high level of compliance, professionalism, honesty, and integrity from the license holders. We believe that this work goes on to strengthen the trust consumers place in LECs and MEs and to improve electrical safety in the province. Next slide, please. This is where I would like to spend a little bit more time talking to you about our virtual or digital plan and tools that we would like to introduce and are working on introducing for the next year. The goal of those initiatives is to motivate compliance and reduce regulatory burden, as Josie mentioned. One of the examples to talk about is virtual master electrician exam. Recent pandemic-related closures have been a clear indication to us that we need to increase digital services provided to our stakeholders. Virtual proctoring will deliver safe and convenient access to the master electrician exam. All you will require is a computer and reliable internet. You will have a link to a secure site where the exam will be proctored by the artificial intelligence. Licensing department team and our IT team have been working together to make this possible. We will continue to offer in-person exams, of course. However, we hope that majority of the applicants will be willing to transfer to the virtual model. While I'm talking about this and giving you a little bit more information, I'd like to ask our technical support to run a poll questions, please, at this time. Please answer to the option that applies to you. Would like to hear from you whether this would be something that you would be interested in participating. We hope that the virtual exam will see the increased support and demand from the community. We would ask you, our license holders, to support this initiative and spread the word to those aspiring master electricians that are thinking about writing the exam. We aim to launch it in January, February of 2021. So please stay tuned, check our website often, check our communication in order to receive more information as to the start and the details. As I see the numbers are coming in, thank you very much for participating, and thank you for your continued support of this initiative. Now, continuing on with the presentation, another exciting project that I'd like to introduce is the one that we call Online Renewal Project. Licensing department staff is working in partnership with the IT to make this happen. This is a multi-phase approach, which is aimed to provide flexibility, ease, and convenience to you, the license holders, in paying and renewing your licenses. The first phase is allowing master electricians to create an account through which you can renew your master electrician license and pay the fees online. So no longer you will have a need to send us a check or to call to pay by the credit card. Master electricians will be able to log into their account and pay online at any time from anywhere. And again, while I continue to speak to this, if we can run another poll, please. Again, I would like you to participate and answer the questions, just so that we can see whether this is something that you would support and would be interested in. Again, my ask of you at this time would be, please support and participate in this initiative as we're embarking on this new digital chapter. We aim to launch this project in spring of 2021. So again, please stay tuned, log in, check our website often, and review our correspondence. We're also looking forward to second phase, which is coming in the years to come, where we'll be introducing more capabilities and online tools to make the process of new registration and renewal of the licenses simple and convenient. Again, thank you very much for participating. I see that the results are coming in, and thank you for your continued support. and spreading the word and being the champion of this initiative. All right. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. At ESA and in the licensing department, the issues of underground economy are very near and dear to our hearts. We're passionate about making partnerships with different entities, with our partners in safety, to ensure that we all join our forces together and target underground economy. At this time, I'm pleased to share the results of our partnership with Kijiji. As you can see, the goal of the Kijiji initiative was to educate, and it continues to educate and direct those who post their advertisements offering electrical services without posting or having their license. ESA staff reviews those ads and communicates with the ad posters and directs them to either post their Ecra ESA license number or to remove their advertisement. If they refuse to do so, licensing department staff would send their ad to Kijiji for mandatory removal. This partnership allows us to achieve 100% removal of non-compliant ads from Kijiji. This provides consumer protection and transparency and education to the public. We work closely with our communications department in order to ensure that we continuously educate, direct, and motivate compliance. Next slide, please. Partnership with WSIB is another project that we recently started in targeting underground economy. Our staff reviews the WSIB records of businesses registered in the electrical category. We cross-reference them with ESA registered database. Those who are not licensed with us will receive our letter advising of their options. Get a license, explain why you don't need a license, or stop offering electrical services. This project is underway, and we will share the results once available. Again, our goal in those projects is to target underground economy, to educate the public, and to ensure that the services are offered by those who are licensed with ESA, those who have skills and knowledge that will protect consumers from electrical harms. Next slide, please. Looking into the future, we have a number of projects and initiatives planned. We will continue collaborating, working closely with Ecra Advisory Council and other partners in safety. We will continue to target underground economy. We'll continue to address compliance and improve safety, working with our license holders, and continue to advocate for consumer protection. Again, thank you for your continued support. And if you have any questions, please direct them through Q&A. I will now like to turn, this concludes my presentation. I would like to turn the floor to Cynthia McGill, who will share enforcement activities highlights with you. Thank you very much. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you, Susanna. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really excited to be here today to share with you some enforcement activities undertaken by ESA. And when I say enforcement, it's activities directed towards dealing with individuals who operate an electrical contracting business without an electrical contractor's license. Next slide, please. I'm first going to start us off with some numbers. So last fiscal year, which ran from April 1st, 2019 to March 31st.
Cynthia?
Yes?
I hear you.
You can't hear me at all? Can you hear me now? Hello?
We can hear you. I can.
Okay. So last fiscal, which ran from April 1st, 2019 to March 31st. Pardon me?
Can everybody hear Cynthia?
I can, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody
Yes, we
can hear? Okay. Okay, so I think we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. I'll continue. So ESA issued 716 notices of violation to unlicensed contractors for either performing electrical work or advertising themselves to do electrical work. In addition, 85 investigations were conducted, 30 charges were laid, and 32 convictions were secured. The total fine amount imposed by the Provincial Offences Court was $269,250. There is one case in particular that received a substantial fine. I will speak to that in a moment, but before I do, I want to give you an update on what is happening in the Provincial Offences Courts. Next slide, please. A lot has changed over the past 8 months, to say the least. Pandemic-related events and closures have had a major effect on the justice system in Ontario and throughout Canada. Court cases, investigations, and prosecutions conducted by ESA have either slowed down, paused, or stopped. The majority of courts in Ontario are currently closed. Commencing March 16th of this year, all in-person Provincial Offence Act matters were immediately adjourned to be rescheduled to a later, still undetermined date. All statutory limitation time periods imposed by the court on March 16th expired September the 13th. Good news is that in response to cessation of in-person appearances, some of the courts have now introduced electronic delivery of documents and video audio appearances, allowing for ESA prosecutions to resume. ESA is closely monitoring government directives and court updates and is taking the appropriate steps. ESA is gradually resuming its investigation following stringent health and safety protocols for all parties involved. The licensing department, in partnership with the legal department, continues to review all incoming reports and complaints and is following its enforcement processes. Next slide, please. Now, I do want to speak to a conviction that was granted by the court earlier this year. On February 7th, 2020, Great Lakes Greenhouses, Inc. of Leamington pled guilty and was convicted in an Ontario Provincial Offences Court for hiring an unlicensed contractor to do electrical work and was fined $100,000 plus $25,000 victim surcharge fee, which is credited to a special provincial government fund to assist victims of crime. In addition, on October 16th of this year, Great Lakes Greenhouse pled guilty to charges laid by the Ministry of Labour for failing to ensure equipment was locked out and was fined $120,000 plus an additional $30,000 victim surcharge. In total, $275,000 in fines and victim surcharge fees were issued to Green Lakes Greenhouses, Inc., all because of what transpired on November 19th, 2018. That day, the worker did not come home to his family. He was only 29. The worker was rearranging the wiring and breakers on a live 600-volt breaker compartment when he received a fatal electrical shock. The electricity had not been properly locked out as required by law. It's an event that should not have happened. Charges have been filed against SR Sprinklers for working as an unlicensed contractor, and that is before the court. The ramifications of working as an unlicensed and unqualified individual is huge. It's not worth it, and hopefully receiving and publicizing convictions as this one will get people to think and stop. Okay, change slide, please. And on that note, I would like to now introduce you to Boriana, who will be providing an update on our awareness campaign for hiring licensed electrical contractors. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia, and good afternoon all. My name is Boriana, and I would also like to welcome our currently 317 participants at our first virtual license holder meeting. So I would like to talk to you today about a Hire a Licensed Electrical Contractor campaign. If I can have the slide, please. Today, I'm very pleased to announce to all of you that on November 9th, ESA has launched its new Hire a Licensed Electrical Contractor campaign that is targeting homeowners to educate them on the benefits of hiring a licensed electrical contractor. During this COVID-19, most of us have been at home, and we all do know that a number of people have been doing renovations at home. So therefore, going forward, we will be putting much more emphasis on educating the homeowners and knowing that why they should hire an LEC. Our new campaign is multi-digital and multimedia. we have produced a number of digital videos that have been posted on Kijiji, Google, HomeStars, and we did a very extensive media relations across the province. As well as for those of you who do read the Toronto Star, there was an article that was published on November 12th, again highlighting the benefits of hiring a licensed electrical contractor, and Susanna was quoted throughout that article. If you haven't had a chance, I do sincerely invite you, please come and visit our website. There is a number of very interesting initiatives that are going on our social media platforms and on our website. Please also do retweet if you think that the safety message is of value to your customers and to your audiences at large. Another activity that we are very proud of is that on September 24th, ESA has partnered with Make It Right team, Mike Holmes Sr., Mike Holmes Jr., and Sherry Holmes, and Improve Canada. It is Canada's largest homeowner improvement shopping mall to discuss all things, again, related to home renovations during its first ever Twitter chat. We were delighted to be a part of that Twitter chat, share our safety tips, and we again use this opportunity to highlight the importance of hiring a licensed electrical contractors. The numbers of how many tweets are on this slide, and again, if you find that interesting and useful, I strongly encourage you to share with your audiences. And I would like now to show you just one of the digital videos on our new hire licensed electrical contractor campaign that is also available on our website. If we can please see the digital video. Thank you very much. So this is just one of the digital videos that are available. It's only 15 seconds, and do hope that you will be able to share it also with your customers. On this note, I would like to pass to Will Barrett, Senior Inspector, who is going to give you a risk-based oversight post-launch update. Will?
Thank you, Boriana. Good afternoon. My name is Will Barrett, and I'm the Senior Inspector for Business Planning and Improvement. And I'm pleased today to be giving you an update on risk-based oversight, the new wiring oversight system that ESA has adopted. As most of you will know, this was a significant multi-year project for ESA that we launched in July of this year. I'd like to thank all of our licensed contractors who have provided feedback about how we can improve this system, either by providing information at a town hall discussion, answering contractor survey, or emailing directly to the RBO email inbox. Building a system that is fair to approximately 9,000 contractors across a diverse province is challenging, and your feedback has been key in achieving positive results with this risk-based oversight change. So what is risk-based oversight? As most of you know, ESA discontinued the authorized contractor program and moved to a new wiring oversight system that we call risk-based oversight. So as you can see, we've got the installer on the left-hand side feeding information into the system, or the notification, the official record of work initiated. So there's multiple ways to submit that information. There's online, there's through the customer service center. After that, we go through the 9 attribute engine and risk rate every notification, wiring notification that comes into the system. Apply filters and programs, and the system generates a recommended oversight response. At that point, the inspector decides whether they'll visit the notification that day, pass the notification without a visit, and then the defects apply into the feedback loop. So the one change really meant several changes, including changing our notification intake system, our new online services, discontinuing the authorized contractor program, the addition of new programs and overrides, and risk rating all wiring notifications using the 9 attribute model. ESA was able to implement all of these as part of RBO, and we're still working towards full functionality for all systems affected by this change. As ESA approached the planned launch date, in May, an unexpected global pandemic significantly affected the people of Ontario. We reached out to our contractor base, and the unanimous reply was that May was not a good time to launch this new system. Most contractors had significantly reduced their workforce and were not able to do business as usual. So contractors were significantly impacted by COVID-19 measures and the effects those measures had on their labor force. Lower work volumes affected contractor defect ratios, and indicators were showing that contractors would struggle with both the RBO change on top of all the challenges of running their business during the global pandemic. In late July, ESA was able to refund ACP contractors for the unrealized ACP fees that they had paid. The fee model was blended and the ACP discount discontinued. Although the ACP discounts are discontinued, there's been no overall increase in fees in 2020. Risk-based oversight will be applied to all contractors in Ontario, and inspection can always be requested even if the risk rating is low or the inspector is not recommended to visit that site that day. New text and email updates. This is really exciting stuff for ESA. So we were able to implement a lot of text and email messages, sort of letting our stakeholders know if we're not going to be making a site visit that day, or that the inspector needs to forward that notification to another day because there's too much work in that particular day. So in an effort to keep our stakeholders informed, we've integrated more advanced messaging into our systems with the rollout of RBO. As most contractors have realized, ESA has started sending out thousands of updates each month when we'll not be attending the site or need to reschedule to a date in the future. These messages were not immediate upon go live, but apply to all notifications created after July 6th. And ESA is committed to continue to find ways to keep our stakeholders informed on when their inspections are going to happen. So a really great first step in the month of July, and then those messages are building and building as we're able to get more new notifications in the system taken out after RBO launch. Impact to our customer service center. As expected with major system changes, there was a significant impact to our customer service center during the launch of RBO. Our CSC group has worked very hard, our customer service center group, to both support the changes with our notification intake system and inform our stakeholder base about the changes. We realized that there was a significant impact to our call times and wait times during the launch, and we appreciate your patience both during the launch and post-launch as ESA strives to bring call times down to pre-launch levels. So as you can see from this slide, we had a significant increase in the average speed to answer a call at our customer service center, and we've worked incredibly hard to get that call time down to make it easier to do business with ESA. There was a number of improvements made to our new online services. We really tried to listen to our contractors, our contractor base about what could be improved about from the existing online services to what we have. So with the launch of RBO, we simplified the application of fees. Just tell us what the work is, and the system will determine the appropriate fee code. Defects written in the last 12 months can now be viewed and downloaded in a list form. You can also view your defect ratio under the RBO details tab, as well as your notification volume over the past 12 months. So this gives you the ability to monitor your defect ratio under RBO. You can now access additional account level correspondence such as outcome summary reports and open notification listings, which weren't available before. So I would encourage all of our contractors to become familiar with our online services. You can access your monthly defect ratio and stay informed as to what programs and pre-auth benefits you can currently receive. You also have access to all non-compliances of the OESC via the defects tab, as well as correspondence. Of course, you can still take out notifications online through a much simplified intake system. So how does ESA want to leverage RBO to affect electrical safety? More time spent at sites that are complex, high risk, or host vulnerable people. The idea is to shift our focus away from low risk and medium risk sites and be able to spend more time at high risk sites, as well as activities to address the underground economy, which our licensing group has spoken about in detail, and there's a lot of exciting initiatives coming up in that area. Also to provide guidance on the code and new technology. These were things that the contractors asked us to try to address, and this is the system to which we're going to leverage the time to be able to address those issues. So ESA will need to collect more data about risk-based oversight now that the system has launched, and we appreciate stakeholder patience as we're able to fully realize functionality of the system. Risk-based oversight webinar. So for some more great information about risk-based oversight, maybe you're getting to know it in a working real-world environment, we've developed 5 webinars that are accessible through our website. If you go to esasafe.com, we have selective inspection, scheduling and communication, the new online services, RBO for municipalities, as well as local distribution companies. So I would encourage you to visit our website for more information about risk-based oversight. You can access these webinars as well as the RBO guidebook, which is the standard for all of the information contractor facing about risk-based oversight. So at this time, I would like to transition us into the Q&A portion of the presentation. We've asked you to send in your questions prior to this meeting, and we'd like to take some time to answer those questions before moving on to closing comments and technical hour. First, I'll address a couple of pre-submitted risk-based oversight questions. So the first question that was asked about risk-based oversight is, please let us know what is the low-risk inspection. This is a complicated answer. There are 9 factors of risk for every wiring notification taken out through ESA. A licensed contractor with a low defect ratio generally does low risk work. Other factors that would make a notification low risk would be how complex the job is, what the environment is like, and how many people would be affected by the installation. Another question to come in would be more info on defect ratio and how it is determined. A great place to go for information about the defect ratio calculation is the RBO guidebook, as well as signing up to our online services and checking your defect ratio calculation. But the defect ratio is calculated with a number of sites with defect or defects, and number of sites visited by an inspector. So that's number of sites with non-compliances of the code over number of sites visited by an inspector. Other info about the defect calculation is that it's calculated using a 12-month rolling window. So defects and site visits will roll out of the window after 12 months. Administrative defects such as please arrange access or areas of the building weren't accessible for an inspection are administrative in nature and don't count towards the defect ratio. And again, you can find more information about that on our website via the RBO guidebook. The third question about RBO was how the rating works, and if you have a good record, will an inspector ever make a visit? So even with low and medium risk inspections, ESA is still going to visit 1 in 5 low risk inspections and target 1 in 2 for medium risk inspections. If in the morning you haven't received a message that the inspector has passed the inspection without a visit or forward it to a day in the future, assume the inspector will be visiting that site that day. As always, if you need a site visit, you can request one through the customer service center when you call for that inspection. So if you do need an inspector to make a site visit, you can make those arrangements. I'd like to hand it over to Paul Shamus, General Manager for Central Region, to answer some of your operational and inspection-related questions.
Thank you, Will. We did receive several questions, and I've broken them into categories, so I'm going to cover a few things on the categories of questions that were asked. We had several people talk about scheduling, and anywhere ranging from the 4-hour window, AM, PM, to the things about actually being able to view an inspector's schedule. So there's a few things that we've done, and of course we have to remember that COVID, we're in the midst of the pandemic. So one is we did turn off the AM or PM and the windows for a while. They are back on now, but that is subject to change. That's a fluid thing that we're monitoring to see that we are actually able to service it in certain areas. Again, we're in hotspots in certain areas of the province, so that has been we'll probably be looking at turning that back off. But more so in the future, what we are looking to do to enhance scheduling is to actually be able to contact people when we are coming, which is, or at least where the inspector is, and if he's going to be en route. Those are enhancements that we're looking at making, more of real-time involvement, that contractors will be able to actually see where the inspector is and when he's coming. I would also encourage you to utilize the 24 and 48 hour notice that we've built into the system with the RBO, so that if you schedule your permit 48 hours in advance, the inspector will see that permit and he can communicate with you a day in advance to tell you whether or not it is passed without a visit, if it's rescheduled for another date, or if you hear nothing, then he would be intending to go on that. Will brought up those stats earlier. That is ramping up more and more. We're up to 15,000 communications plus a month now. So those are some of the things that we're doing with scheduling. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, we may be limited and it may change a bit. So be patient with us and we'll try and communicate as best we can. We had another inquiry about the costs of doing business around the Toronto area with the utility and the utility costs for disconnects and services. Unfortunately, ESA has nothing in the regulation that can assist contractors in determining, or the homeowners in determining, what Toronto Hydro or any utility is charging. It is, we certainly feel for it. We understand how it happens and the challenges that it puts on to the homeowners and as well as the contractors. I would suggest contacting the utility directly and seeing that if you can maybe band together a little bit and have a discussion with the utility to see if you can work something out with them. Unfortunately, that's probably not the answer you want to hear, but that's all we have. We had another question about or several questions about inspectors and if we're actually continually looking for new inspectors. Are we hiring in areas and in what areas? So basically that is something we're always doing. We're backfilling now. We constantly are reviewing our areas to see if we have gaps. So we try and fill gaps. It is a longer process, but we are always accepting applications through our website, and we usually go through testing and first interviews and have potential candidates in the hopper, so that when we do have a need for inspectors, that we're in a position to hire off the street, which will be something that we are going through that process actually currently. We had more questions on our protocols around site safety to do with COVID. Several questions on that. Basically, ESA has protocols in place and PPE and that we provide our inspection staff that they have to adhere to. If they attend a site that is unsafe, which has happened, that has no protocols in place and maybe in the hot spots, we will work with other jurisdictions to ensure that that site is made aware that they have an obligation to protect everyone. So people like the Ministry of Health and the MOL will work closely with them. As for the PPE requirements, the inspectors have masks, booties, gloves, that type of thing. And they have a protocol on how to use them and dispose of them. The other thing is that we have worked with our unions closely to allow them to expand our inspection possibilities. That is to utilize videos and pictures and conversations with contractors. So that is based on the at the inspector's discretion. So I encourage you, if you have a site that may be difficult to get into doing this, that you talk to the inspector up front and try and work through pictures and videos. And that's a possible option for you if the inspector and everybody's in agreement. So defects, we had a question on that, and that was basically about defects that do not belong to the contractor, that they've gone to site and the inspector has written the defects to them. Actually, it's a very simple process. Discuss with the inspector. If you do not get satisfied with that, go to the senior inspector. That's we have a process easily to shift those off of your record and on to whoever is responsible for them, be it the building owner or whatever. We have a process for that. So make sure you have that conversation with the inspector if you have a defect that you don't think belongs to you. Another question, we had some questions on fees, but one that stuck out was the one on spas. Why is it $163 compared to a service for $89? Well, a spa installation is a higher risk based on our risk-based inspection module, or our risk-based matrix. So the spa is something that we basically attend 100% of. We are constantly reviewing the fees, and that is something that we should probably look at in the fee committee. They'll do the analysis on that, as well as regulatory, to look at the risk of them. We do have a program that will allow people that are install a lot of them to get less inspection on that. So we will have to review those fees. Another question was on 24/7 service. I'm not sure where they were trying to get at what service. We don't provide 24/7, but there is the online tool for yourself. We also have 24/7 coverage through our on-call system. So in an emergency, you can certainly get a hold of an inspector, and we can provide service 24/7 that way. If it's technical or something like that, I don't know that we have anything. We've talked often that we were going to start publishing Q&As and that type of thing. So you can probably talk to the technical guys, John and Keith, when they're up on their session about that. They might touch on that as well for you. That is all I had. So I'm going to pass it on to Cynthia McGill now.
Great, thanks, Paul. So I did get a couple questions, and the first one was, what does ESA do to combat the underground economy? You need to focus more on unlicensed contractors and not LECs. So ESA takes the underground economy seriously and is committed to stopping unlicensed electrical contractors from putting Ontarians at risk. ESA uses a progressive enforcement approach and try educating and directing first. If a person refused to comply, we may commence an investigation. Upon conviction, the person may face a fine and or imprisonment. And as you've heard from today's presentation, in cooperation with Kijiji, ESA is targeting advertisements from unlicensed contractors who refuse to cooperate. Also, ESA launched an anonymous reporting tool so anyone can report an unlicensed contractor at esasafe.com. The second question I had was, is there an award for reporting unlicensed activity? So targeting underground economy is a shared goal. Reporting unlicensed activity ensures that someone who operates without a license will not take away your job and that they don't jeopardize electrical safety in the province of Ontario. Now I'll pass it over to Scott, who has some questions on licensing administration.
Thank you, Cynthia. So I have a few questions here. First one is, why are homeowners allowed to do electrical work and pull permits in their own homes, even though they are not licensed electrical contractors? So this is a common one we get, and I see there's a couple of them that have come through the Q&A, taking slightly different variations on this as well. But the short answer is, or the most direct answer is the Electricity Act and licensing regulation contains a section that allows homeowners to do electrical work in their own homes, as long as they file the applicable notification with the ESA for inspection. So that is the law, and here in Ontario, that we as ESA are asked to enforce as written, but we don't get to write those laws. There's another one that came up through the Q&A similar to that in terms of allowing unlicensed individuals to buy electrical equipment. Again, there's nothing in our regulations or act to prohibit that. One of the things that other trades have done in the past is told stores they won't support them if they continue to sell certain products to unlicensed folks. So there's a sort of a grassroots suggestion for folks. Next question, can you email bulletins to the contractors? So the bulletins are available on ESA's website. They're updated regularly, and you're welcome to review them and pull them from there. You can also register as a community of interest with the CSA group, and then follow the bulletin page, and they will issue notifications or issue you notifications every time there is a new bulletin release. Okay. Next question is regards to pre-masters training and the exam. So are they being held? And the answer is yes. The pre-masters training is currently only available through an online or self-study option. They're not available in classes right now. The master electrician exams are currently running right now. They were canceled in March to June. But the exam is now being held across the province with enhanced health and safety measures. The session sizes are capped to facilitate physical distancing at the exam, and additional cleaning is done before and after each session as well. Additionally, individuals must sign an attestation before the exam and are obliged to inform ESA if they become sick with COVID, so we may inform the necessary parties to take the necessary precautions. Additionally, as mentioned earlier in today's presentation, we continue to work on a virtual proctor option, which would ultimately allow an individual to write the exam from their home or business on a computer with a camera. If I'm going to answer, just sorry, one more question or two more questions that have come through in the chat before turning it over for some technical questions. Someone on the chat asked if logos are available for co-branding. So those are posted on our website, the Ecra logo that you can use, as well as the guidelines for how to use that. Someone else had asked if the license holder meeting, if this will be shared with all members or with everyone that can attend. And yes, it will eventually be posted to our website, and we'll communicate that to everyone as we go. Someone else had asked, with regards to the 434A power line journey person certificate, asking why does ESA mandate that they register with the Ontario College of Trades? That's not true. We don't mandate that you register with the Ontario College of Trades. If you were issued one with the MTCU or a previous entity before, we will honor that towards your experience for the master electrician license. There is one key caveat that if you do register with the Ontario College of Trades under that certification, you must continue it and maintain it, as that is now the governing body for that certificate of qualification. So if you register with them, you must maintain that. And just want to address also, there's been some comments from the Q&A portion about the poll questions and about how those were structured. Appreciate that feedback. This is our first time doing it. We greatly appreciate your participation in it and that feedback, so we can make it better for next time. So that concludes my questions. I will now introduce John Calabrese and Keith Bartlett, two of ESA's technical advisors, that will run through some technical questions. I would encourage, if anyone has any other questions, do put them in the Q&A. We are doing a bit ahead of schedule for time, so we may be able to get some additional questions in as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me. My name is John Calabrese. I'm technical advisor from Central Region at ESA, and my colleague Keith Bartlett will join me here, technical advisor for Eastern Region. And we received 20-odd questions from submitters prior to the meeting that we'll attempt to address here in this meeting. Keith will take over the screen and actually show you the questions, And hopefully we can speak to the answers, not just read them out to you. And if Keith can go to the first slide, we'll deal with the first of the technical questions. So, and this question was, if there are 3 fridges in a single family dwelling, which ones are exempt from being protected by a combination arc fault circuit interrupter? So, the requirement for combination type arc fault circuit interrupters applies to branch circuits that feed receptacles of 125 volts in the home. There are a few exemptions to that, one of which is the mandatory refrigerator circuit in kitchens. So the number of fridges doesn't actually matter. If it's a fridge circuit in a kitchen, it is exempt from AFCI requirements. That fridge circuit can feed more than 1 fridge receptacle in that kitchen. The entire branch circuit is exempt from AFCI. And the question and rule references are there below. Hopefully that answers the question as it was intended. Next, if a receptacle is installed outdoors on a dwelling, it needs to be protected by AFCI. However, if not installed in a dwelling, it does not. Why is that? An example is it's for a medical lift. So again, the AFCI requirements are for branch circuits for that dwelling. A receptacle located in a garden shed or away from the dwelling or not for the dwelling is not required to be AFCI. Mandatory outdoor receptacles on the house they are for the dwelling. It does not, there is no specific exemption for a medical lift. If it is on the dwelling and the branch circuit runs through the dwelling, then AFCI is required. Okay, next. If a 15 or 20 amp 125 volt receptacle is relocated in a dwelling unit, does it now need to be AFCI protected? So if a receptacle is relocated, it would mean that the branch circuit wiring would have been extended. And that new portion of the branch circuit would fall under the requirement to be AFCI protected. You would not have to protect the entire branch circuit, but the portion that was extended, which can be done with an outlet type AFCI receptacle at the last existing receptacle, or you can choose to protect the entire branch circuit. But the reason being that you're extending a branch circuit. Next question. Why don't you have a checklist of circuits in a residential situation that require AFCI protection as a quick reference? So we don't have a checklist, but there is a short list of those that do not require it, and that short list is the mandatory kitchen outlet circuit, like I mentioned earlier, the mandatory kitchen counter receptacles, the mandatory bathroom vanity receptacle, and a sump pump if it is a single receptacle dedicated to a sump pump. That's not a mandatory receptacle, but if you install it as a single, it is exempt. So it's a short list of 4 that are not required to have AFCI protection. Fundamentally, everything else is if it is for the dwelling. And like I mentioned earlier, if it's away from the dwelling, the rule would not apply in the first place. Okay, next. Oh, sorry, I think you skipped one there, Keith.
Yeah. Seems to only go one way. Calm down.
You can't go backwards?
No, I am. I'm on you.
All right.
Oh.
Can we AFCI protect everything? Well, yes, of course you can. That might be a costly endeavor, but yes, there's nothing preventing you from AFCIing everything. Nothing is not permitted to be AFCI protected. What are the proper steps to take if AFCI nuisance tripping is being experienced at a site? So first of all, you should determine that it is in fact nuisance tripping and not the AFCI device doing its job and detecting an arcing event and tripping. If you've determined that it is actually nuisance tripping, there's a link on the ESA website that will take you to an Electro Federation of Canada page where you can report that incident of nuisance tripping. And I think the form that you fill out online is on the next page, on the next slide. And there it is there. It asks you for the details of the manufacturer, of the equipment that is causing it. It could be a microwave, that's a commonly reported one. It could be any type of equipment, a manufacturer, model number, serial number, and then the AFCI manufacturer, model, etc. I did this myself recently for 6 AFCIs I bought for my house just to retrofit, and yeah, 2 of them were tripping. They got back to me within 12 hours. So it is working. And there's a direct link to that on the website. Can a sump pump plug into an existing outdoor GFCI receptacle? Perhaps the underlying question here was, would it be exempt from AFCI if you plug a sump pump into it? So an outdoor receptacle is required to be GFCI. Can you plug a sump pump into it? I doubt the cord would reach unless the sump pump is also outside. A sump pump is not required to be GFCI'd if that was the intent of the question. And that receptacle would not be exempt from AFCI if it was a general purpose outdoor receptacle. But if the cord would reach, I suppose there's nothing preventing you from actually plugging it in. Right, next. When an existing kitchen is being renovated, is it required to GFCI protect the existing split receptacle? So the answer to that is no, because if the existing receptacle was installed prior to it being GFCI protected and you're not altering it, you're not relocating the branch wiring, then you would not have to GFCI protect that receptacle. It is possible during the kitchen renovation that they may relocate the sink in such a way that it really should be GFCI protected, but that is not wiring that you have done. So the answer would be no. And next slide. Okay, can we have the next slide, Keith?
And the GFCI
Sorry.
fraud.
I'm sorry, I thought it looked the same as the last one. Can the GFCI for a hot tub be installed in the main electrical panel and a standard disconnect be used for the hot tub? Well, the answer is yes. A hot tub now requires a service disconnect within sight of the hot tub. It just has to be a disconnect. A hot tub also requires GFCI protection, which the GFCI protection can be located anywhere, and it actually has to be at least 3 meters away from the hot tub, the GFCI device. But you definitely can locate a GFCI device in the basement, and then a standard disconnect would be weatherproof if it's exposed to the weather, located outside for the hot tub. Yes, you can. Yeah, next slide. And this question, when bonding metal parts of a pool, can the number 6 conductor be connected to the pool pump, which is connected to the electrical distribution panel with a number 14 bond? So this number 6 conductor is what we call the equipotential bond conductor between all pieces of pool equipment. That is required to be done to the pool pump and to all of the other equipment through which water flows and to the metal parts of the pool. They are all required to be bonded together. You do not, perhaps the underlying question here was, do I also need to run that number 6 to the panel? And the answer to that is no. But yes, you can connect it to the pool pump. In fact, it is required. Okay, next question. This question, when is the isolation of the neutral conductor in meter bases on the supply side of the service expected to be enforced? At the moment, there's no change in the current bulletin ESA publishes. If you do the service grounding at usually the combination service panel in the house, and the meter base comes with a neutral that is connected, notwithstanding the fact that the code would say you can't connect that neutral to any metal parts on the line or load side of the point where the grounding connection is made. In Ontario, we continue to permit the past practice when the meter bases came and still do come with the neutral connected to the meter enclosure. So there's no change contemplated yet. There are proposals made to the meter base standard to accommodate service grounding in the meter base, but currently it has no such requirements. And next question: Does the identified conductor, otherwise known as a neutral, need to be installed at all locations where there are multiple switches on a circuit, such as 3-way switching at the top and bottom of stairs? And the answer is yes. At all switch locations for permanently installed luminaires, an identified conductor or neutral needs to be left at the switch for the future installation of a device such as a dimmer or motion sensor or what have you. Or if you're installing the switch, the dimmer or motion sensor up front, you would already have to have a neutral there in any case. Next question. Can electric vehicle supply equipment controllers load, so EVSC controllers load, be based on software settings, such as with a mobile app, for the conductor size, over current protection, or service loading? So currently the answer to this is no. EVSE will come with a nameplate rating in amps on its nameplate. That is its load rating. That is to be taken as the load, and it is considered continuous load. It's defined as continuous load. We do publish an item allowing for selectable settings, usually by dip switches, behind a barrier that are part of the product, and marking the EVSE in such a way as to how it's been set based on the physical dip switch settings, but not with a mobile app. That could be changed without even being home. So there's no change to that currently. Perhaps there could be in the future, but at the moment, whatever number is on the nameplate, unless you're using physical dip switches to change the setting and marking the equipment, you would have to base it on the number that's on the nameplate. This question, is it required to request 12 months of hourly historical demand from the local utility when installing EVSE? So the reason for this question is if you're installing EVSE and there's some question about whether the existing service size is adequate to accommodate that load, like we spoke about earlier, an inspector may ask you to provide a load calculation to determine if there's enough capacity on the service for that EVSE. The code also allows for a 12-month historical demand to be used in lieu of a load calculation. And if the 12-month historical peak demand shows that there's enough capacity left on the service, then you could install whatever load, be it an EVSE or a hot tub or what have you. For residential smart meters, peak demand data is not available. So utilities can give you monthly kilowatt hour consumption. They can also drill down and give you hour by hour kilowatt hour consumption. And that's as close as you can come to getting a true peak demand from the utility for a residential smart meter. So we will take that number, the highest single hour kilowatt hour demand, and we add a correction factor of 25% to it to be on the conservative side, and effectively consider that the peak demand of the last 12 months. So it's not mandatory to get a 12-month hour by hour historical demand. It's mandatory to either provide a load calculation showing there's enough capacity on the service, or a 12-month peak demand data from the utility, which for residential smart meters doesn't happen to be available. For commercial ones, it is. Okay, next. When doing a load calculation for a small dwelling, does the unfinished basement or the dryer and washing machine need to be added to the calculation? So the unfinished basement does not. The dryer does get included. The washing machine does not. It's just an outlet. It's not part of a demand calculation. And this will all depend also on whether or not you've also already allowed for an electric range or not. The additional loads are added in at different demand calculations based on whether or not you've allowed for an electric range. Okay, next question. And when there's a difference between the thickness of an installed conductor and the value shown in the applicable table 10A through 10D, which size should be applied? So those new tables were added to the 2015 code. It added quite a number of additional tables for both conductor size and internal diameter of raceways. There are two rules in section 12 that allow you to either use those tables, and it'll tell you how many conductors of a given size can go into a raceway of a given size. And it even further broke raceways down into different types of raceways like rigid PVC, EMT, and so on. That same rule has a sub-rule that also allows you to use the measured diameter of the conductor and internal diameter of the raceway. So either one is correct, and it will result in differences in some cases. The measured diameter of a conductor in many cases won't be the same, and it might be smaller than what's in the table. And if that's the case, you can use that value. So either one is allowed. Now, this one has raised a lot of questions since 2012. So why is 90° C wire ampacity reduced at the termination of a circuit breaker marked 75? And the reason for that, and it's not just circuit breakers, fusible disconnects, and other types of equipment, in their certification standards are required to be load tested with a conductor attached to its terminals, a conductor size based on 75° column of table 2 or 4. That's the conductor size they use to load test the equipment and measure temperature rise. So when you install it, you need to mimic how it was tested. You need to put the same size conductor on those terminals as it was tested with. Even though the wire you may be using has a 90° insulation rating, the physical dimensions of the copper wire also help to dissipate heat from those terminations. So the rule is aimed at installing the equipment in the same manner in which it was tested and certified. So the conductor still has an ampacity of 90 degrees based on table 2, but at the termination, and it applies to the first 1.2 meters of conductor, you have to size it as though it was rated at 75. And it's to align with the equipment testing requirements. And what is the clearance required for LED and halogen recessed lights from cabinets and shelving? So, in Rule 32-200 requires you to keep to ensure that combustible materials that may be stored below a luminaire be not subjected to temperatures exceeding 90 degrees C. That's the technical requirement. There's an Appendix B note to that rule that with a diagram showing that 150 millimeter clearance between either halogen or LED. If you achieve that clearance, you will be seen to meet the rule without having to demonstrate that you're not going to subject the combustibles to greater than 90. If you can show in some other manner by technical document from the luminaire manufacturer, what have you, you can reduce that clearance. But if you meet the 150, then based on the Appendix B note, it will be seen as meeting that rule. Whether it's halogen or LED, and I think we all know that LED emits a lot less heat than halogen ever did. And perhaps in the future that'll change, but at the moment, don't subject any combustibles to greater than 90 degrees, and unless you can demonstrate otherwise, make it 150 millimeter clearance. And this question for rough-in inspection: does the wire connector, otherwise known as a moret for many people, need to be installed, or can conductors be twisted together without the wire connector? So at rough-in inspection, we ask that all joints in junction boxes and outlet boxes, etc., be completed for the rough-in inspection. It's the only chance the inspector gets to see all of those joints made prior to a final inspection. So yes, it would include wire connectors being installed. That's the reason for that. And this question, where can I obtain up-to-date code changes on residential installations? So we don't publish anything that summarizes all the residential code rules from the code, and something along the lines like PS Knight ever did. The only answer we can give you is we do publish a fair number of bulletins that are aimed at residential installations, so there's information there, and obviously the code itself, but there isn't a single source document on residential code changes. Okay, and this question: what is the process to resolve different opinions between a contractor and a local area inspector about a code interpretation? So the first step you should take is to contact the senior inspector for that team. Every inspector is on an inspection team with a senior inspector who can deal firsthand with differences of opinion. Beyond that, you can go to the senior inspector in conjunction with yourself, can take it to the regional technical advisor like Keith or myself. And that's how we resolve. And ultimately, if it's to deal with a process issue associated with that, the general manager can be involved as well. And there is a bulletin actually that explains that further. Is it possible for a licensed contractor to have access to a technical advisor or someone similar for code clarifications? And if you ask your local area inspector, he can advise you who his regional technical advisor is. There's the 4 of them for the provinces, myself and Keith, and Malcolm Brown and Trevor Tremblay for the 4 regions. And by all means, we take many questions day after day from licensed electrical contractors on code applications, whether it's for a job you're actually working on or just trying to understand some rule or some quote you might be working on. We take questions in many forms on that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what we're here to do. Fundamentally, I think sometimes there's a misperception of our role within the industry. And I mean, we're here to support you and to try to help you with your installations, to get you as knowledgeable about the systems and the infrastructure that you're installing, so that it's done in a code compliant manner the first time, so that when our inspectors arrive, if, as we Will and Paul had talked about earlier, you mean you're getting a physical inspection through our other programs and filters like RBO, the inspector will be able to pass your site without any defects issued. Our inspectors are not expected to issue defects. There is no measure within ESA on any front that we expect any inspector to issue a certain quantity of defects, sort of like you might think occurs with police officers and speeding tickets or parking tickets or things of that. We do not have that. We're just trying to work within the industry to address compliance and to help expand knowledge and understanding of the trade for installers and contractors, designers, engineers. And we issue defects to be transparent so that we can reference exactly what rule is being discussed at that point of time. And it's really fundamental to know that it's a point of discussion. It's not a commentary on your work or your abilities or your knowledge. It's just us through the process identifying the specific portion of the installation that we need some additional information in, or some more clarity, or for you to focus on or to understand that nuance of the code. It's a very complicated and nuanced book, so it's easy to overlook a particular application or how it would evolve. So it's, like I said, it's definitely not a commentary on all the many parts of an installation that you manage so effortlessly when you see a defect or what have you. But we're here to support you and hopefully address these issues before they become defects, would be the ideal solution, which sort of underlines our plan review process for when you have larger projects, why we provide commentary before you begin the work so that we can have a more compliant installation. We still have quite a bit of time, so if you have any other questions about technical questions, we're here till 3:55. So one of the questions that came in that didn't get addressed through our technical slideshow is was about when are we going to be inspecting power over Ethernet installations, and we already have. If you're doing any installations that include power over Ethernet for traditional wiring installations, such as light fixtures or BAS systems, things like that, that we have inspected in the past, we are inspecting them still today. So our inspectors are starting to see that more frequently. It seems, at least from what I've been made aware of, that the lighting power over Ethernet sort of fizzled more or less and didn't sort of take off. I don't know, John, have you seen much of it in the?
No, I don't think it took off the way we might have been expected to. But it's fundamentally just a class 2 wiring. The Ethernet output fits in the limits of class 2 circuits, and it is a class 2 installation. And the fact that it's Ethernet means nothing. It's not a communication system, therefore it's not exempt from the code.
Yeah, awesome. We were asked a question, are you able to come off the fridge circuit to control additional bar fridges? Yes, you are. If you cannot exceed the available loading of that circuit, so for your typical 15 amp branch circuit in a dwelling unit, that would be 1200 watts, so you couldn't exceed that, but you could have multiple fridges as of the latest edition of the code on a single branch circuit, and if they all feed fridges regardless of the physical size of the fridge, so if it's a full-size fridge and a bar fridge or wine fridge or beer fridge or whatever other fridges they may come up with in the future, perhaps a kombucha fridge or something of that nature, they can all be on the same circuit, and if it only feeds fridges, then you could be exempt from the ASCI requirements if you and your clients so choose to not apply that requirement, but you can install AFCI if you wish. Like John talked about before, I think that was the circuit where he had most of his issues, and it was associated with a defrost cycle, I believe, right, John?
Yeah, on the FCI. Yeah, and what Keith just spoke to, all of those fridges he mentioned would have to be in the kitchen in order to be on the fridge circuit. It couldn't be in your basement or garage for keeping beer cold or what have you.
Yeah. We were asked a couple questions about why we exempt some pumps from requiring AFCI protection, but not sewage pumps. It's really just the way that the code committee defined the exemptions. I don't know that there was actually given that much consideration that sewage pumps were common, or I don't know what their rationale was. I honestly can't speak to that. It's just the way that the code sort of evolved for these exemptions. I know there's a constant sort of approach that the CEC would like to perhaps eventually remove the exemptions for AFCI. So I think more to align with the NEC, which is the code in the States, where sort of all branch circuits will eventually perhaps require combination AFCIs. But the CEC is taking a tiered approach to that. So right now they're exempting some pumps, but sewage pumps are not included in that exemption for whatever reason. I don't know if there's any other support, John?
No, other than the fact that some pumps were exempt right from day one in 2002, when AFCIs were mandatory for bedroom receptacles only. At that time, they chose to exempt some pump receptacles in the event a bedroom is in a basement when the sump pump is in the same room. That was the reason for exempting the sump pump in the first place. But when it expanded to all other outlets, they didn't remove the sump pump exemption, but they certainly didn't add sewage pumps to it. So there's no other technical reason for it.
So, and then we were asked another question, John, about the Tesla Generation 3. So we try not to be manufactured specific, but at this time, we are still trying to grapple with the modifiable through applications, and we really prefer to base conductor sizes and circuit sizes on the nameplates, which is how a product is designed and tested and approved. We did offer an easement through our bulletin in section 86 for ones that were field selectable, and I don't know why Tesla chose to no longer offer that option. They could have that in combination with the app, and then we would still accept the dip switch settings, even though you could also use an app within the ranges of that. But for whatever reason, Tesla's chosen to change their products. And so because of, and I mean, we have really not had that much time to address this within our group. This is a relatively recent change. Any thoughts, John?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I suppose app selectable products they're going to become ubiquitous. There's all kinds of kitchen appliances that don't even have switches on them anymore. You can only operate them through a phone app. So the fact that you can change the load setting on a vehicle charger without even being home, never mind opening up a cover and changing dip switch settings, you can only default to the nameplate rating. If that's the maximum load it can allow, then that's what you have to base the installation on. I mean, you could even say it was somewhat of an easement to allow the dip switch selectable to be used instead of the number that's on the nameplate, but at least it's a physical change you had to make.
Also, you mean, like, if you have any issues with that product over time, you mean, we know a dip switch setting is not going to change, whereas, you mean, if a factory setting, if a product defaulted to a factory setting and all of a sudden it overloaded the circuit, the comment was also made that they were saying the breaker would trip, and that's not always the case. There's a number of multiple times, and I'm sure that most of the contractors or installers that are involved in are attending our presentation have seen circuit breakers not trip when you expected them to trip, which can lead to fires, also damage to the conductors and the installation, as well as the building itself. So breakers do not always trip on overloads. As far as sizing services, really, if you mean consumers went with the electrical vehicle energy management system option, then they're gold. Like, you can have 100 amp service and put in a 60 amp electric vehicle service equipment, and you do not need to do a load calculation or anything other than the wiring of that infrastructure. So I mean, that is always an option for consumers, and given how you would want to have your vehicle charged, I'm surprised that more don't take that option personally, but obviously it's not a requirement of the code. It's just, that's my own personal thought. It would seem to be the shortest path between 2 points, really.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and a much preferred option to upgrade in a service if you put a vehicle, electric vehicle energy management system, which is nothing more than a couple of CTs on the main conductors in your service that will feed into a controller and not allow the service to be overloaded when the vehicle's charging. It'll just throttle down the vehicle charging if need be. I mean, that's certainly preferable to having to upgrade a service, especially if you live in a townhouse where they won't even give you more than 100 amp service in the first place. So it's certainly a very viable option.
I agree. So we were asked the question, is it mandatory to install a 15 or 20 amp dedicated receptacle in the garage for new construction for an EV car plug? And the answer is no, it's not required anymore. The building code got changed at the beginning of this year, I believe. So much has happened this year. Maybe it was last year. But no, it's no longer required to install a outlet for EVSE. I'm surprised that builders aren't asking for it. I think that it's pretty clear that within at least our lifetime that these are probably going to be ubiquitous, and most houses are going to have electric vehicles. So it looks like that's the way car manufacturers are going. We were asked a question, if you're installing wireless switches, do you still require a physical wired light switch per room? And the answer is, at this time, for the rooms or areas that are identified in 30-500, yes. However, that is going to change when the next code is adopted. Any other thoughts, John?
Yeah, it's going to change. It's going to be, those series of rules will be deleted from the electrical code, 3500 to 510. However, they are already in the building code, have always been there, and will remain there. So it continues to be a requirement, but not under the electrical code. And the sort of tag along question with that is, can I use wireless switching to control those lights in those rooms or areas? And that will be under the purview of the building code as well. Is a wireless switch a switch, as is referred to in that rule? Currently, the electrical code would define a switch as something that actually switches the circuit, not some remote device. The province of Alberta has a bulletin they published that, yes, a wireless switch is a switch. You can already use them there. But that entire set of requirements and whether or not a wireless switch is a switch is going to be completely under the purview of the building code as of our next code.
Yeah, and I don't think we know exactly when that'll be yet, right?
And no, we don't know when we'll adopt it in Ontario.
We were asked a question, what is the minimum requirements to apply for an ESA notification, for example, in a house renovation, to add only 4 pot lights to an existing switch when no panel and or no new breaker is involved? Basically, the way that 2004, which is the requirement for electrical notifications, is worded, and then that in conjunction with 2005, which is the rule that has the exemptions to 2004. anytime that you're adding any new equipment in a house, regardless of whether it's one light or one receptacle or one connected device, or replacing a circuit breaker, replacing a receptacle. If you're not an LEC, you are required to apply for a wiring notification with ESA. We do have some additional exemptions, so an LEC can do like-for-like replacements of existing devices, such as receptacles, up to 30 amps, I believe, right, John?
Yep.
Without a notification in an owner-occupied dwelling, but that's limited to owner-occupied dwellings. Sometimes that's become convoluted and it gets applied outside of residential, but that exemption to apply for notification is very specific to owner-occupied dwellings, and it's a little bit more inclusive for an LEC than a homeowner. A homeowner can replace a light fixture, take a light fixture down, put a new light fixture up without a notification. But that's about the extent that a homeowner can do it. The question also is asked for fridges. If a home has a basement kitchen and a main kitchen but are not separate units, does the basement require an AFCI? And if it's a kitchen, basically, no, you don't require AFCI. If it's just a fridge that's sitting in the basement, then that's not a kitchen. So normally a kitchen, although we don't define a kitchen within our code, and we really don't want to get into that. That's not what we're about. I mean, AFCI does provide a higher level of protections for your customers, which I think fundamentally everybody that's in this presentation and within the trade wants to do. You want to know that your job is going to be safe for the people that use it, and AFCI helps is an additional step towards achieving that. Beyond, you mean, using an LEC such as all of yourselves, as well as, you mean, the proper size conductors and proper size overcurrent device, et cetera, et cetera. But you mean, if it's a kitchen, it's a kitchen. You can have 4 kitchens in your house. We do not limit you to 1 kitchen at all in our code. You would need to, you mean, a bar is not a kitchen. You would need to have cooking and food preparation sort of things there. But you mean, don't want to define a kitchen today and say, oh, this is all a kitchen can be. It could be more, it could be less. You mean, you would have to talk to your local area inspector. Any additional thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, the common question that comes up on that is a butler's pantry a kitchen? Well, no, it's a butler's pantry. You usually don't do cooking in there, although some butler's pantries could very well include a range for all we know. I mean, house designs are pretty wide open. The sky's the limit. But generally speaking, I think most people will recognize when a kitchen is a kitchen.
Yes.
So in the case of a kitchen, the mandatory kitchen counter receptacles, for instance, aren't required in the butler's pantry. You don't have to have split receptacles or 20 amp slot above the counter in a butler's pantry. It's not a kitchen. You can certainly put them there if you want. And if you do, they're not exempt from AFCI. So there's a whole bunch of sort of overlapping rules that stem from, is it a kitchen or not? What are the requirements and what's exempt?
Yeah, and Malcolm just pointed out that a kitchen would have a stove, and if it is a kitchen so that you're exempt from AFCI, like John just said, you would have to meet all the other kitchen requirements, and they're much more restrictive than other areas of the house for number of outlets, number of circuits, and so on. We were asked, was there a code change to install a conduit for future electrical EVSE stations to a garage? That was an option in the building code. That was never in the electrical code, but that has also been removed from the building code at this time. So you do not need to install a empty raceway. It was just one way of the building code allowed for future EVSE. But it was never a requirement of the electrical code. We were asked another question about power over Ethernet equipment, and they said the exact use of data cable is determined by the customer. If this is the case, will all data cables need inspections? I would assume anybody that installs cables, they do it for a particular purpose. I mean, we're trying to work with the industry to ensure that electrical systems are robust and functional, not only for the short term, but for, longer applications, so that not only do consumers have a safe system, but they also have some confidence in its reliability, and that it is done in a compliant way by skilled individuals, such as all the LECs that work so hard and diligently throughout the province. So if it's being used for things that are not directly communications related, then it should be inspected. We really, as ESA, rely on you as the installers as well as your customers to notify us that. We're not going to come back to your site in the future to sort of jump around a corner and go, aha, you're using this cable you told us it was going to be used for a telephone and you're using it for a light fixture. That's really not what our mandate is. So hopefully, everybody's upfront about it, and we can work with the industry to achieve this.
Yeah, so Keith, on that, a new subsection was added to section 16 of the code, 16-300. It's called power and communication class 2 circuits. It's not called power over Ethernet. Ethernet is a specific IEEE standard for communication equipment, for data equipment. The most common application of that 16-300 will be power over Ethernet. It just so happens that an Ethernet router, its output, like I said earlier, falls within the limits of a class 2 circuit. So if its outputs are being used to power LED luminaires or built-in automation systems, variable air valve dampers, power curtains and window blinds, or any number of things that it has enough power to drive, that's not a communication system that's exempt from the code. It is a class 2 circuit installation, which has never been exempt from the code. So although the cables look the same, you can use Cat5 cables, and communication cables are permitted to be used on class 2 circuits by the code. The fact that they're being connected to the output of what we think of as an Ethernet router, but instead of transmitting data are powering low power devices like LED luminaires, that's a class 2 circuit installation. The other technologies could meet that same criteria of power and communication together in the same circuit or in the same cable assembly. So in conjunction with driving an LED luminaire, you might have control features that change its color, that do all kinds of things to which ones are on, which ones are off, motion sensors to control them. There'll be an element of control and communication to it, but fundamentally it's being used to power loads through an Ethernet router. And 16-300 is a series of rules that was written to address some more specific requirements on that. But fundamentally, it was never exempt from the code and still isn't.
Awesome. We were asked, is there a limit to the kind of work a homeowner can do? For example, can they wire an addition to their homes or a second home on their property? And no, there isn't really. A homeowner can, if they apply for notification, they're not exempt. They can do whatever they want. I don't believe that they can act as a contractor, so they can't have people working for them, but the person's home is their castle, and we do the inspections of those. They're not exempt from the code, but we are, as Scott talked about earlier, our Electricity Act doesn't extend into that sort of venue. We asked a question, can a quick reference table for common circuit applications be created for table D3? And I think you've been involved with table D3, haven't you, John? Isn't there talk about different change being done? Or?
There's a proposal to amend D3 because the ampacities in tables 1 to 4 changed in the 2012 code with the 90-degree ampacities of conductors changed. And D3, oddly enough, is based on conductor ampacity for calculate voltage drop, as opposed to conductor resistance, which is what it should be based on. So there is a proposal to change table D3 and base it on conductor resistance. I don't think the original proposal is going to be accepted. I agree with the intent behind it. The ampacity of the conductor really has nothing to do with how much voltage drop there'll be across the conductor when current's flowing in it. The specific resistance of the conductor material is what will determine voltage drop. So hopefully we'll see that done, because I think it's high time.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We had another couple questions about EVSE. It's obviously a very popular topic in the industry right now. So one of them is it still mandatory to do 200 amp services for new construction builds? And the answer is, again, no. That was a building code thing, and the ESA's never really mandated that. I don't know that we were even asked about our thoughts about that when it was initially introduced. And then does this 50 amp, if you install a 6-50 amp receptacle for a Tesla, require a disconnect? And that can be used as your disconnect. We would accept the plug as a disconnect. I don't believe we would require an additional one. And we only require a disconnect for 60 amps and above. And somebody asked, is removing knob and tube forcible by ESA? So no, we do not. The way that we refer to it, I believe there's a common misconception in the industry. They say we grandfather things. We don't actually grandfather things, but we apply the code of the day. So if it was compliant at the time of its installation and it's still serviceable, then it can continue to be used. So knob and tube wiring that's not been altered, you can't extend knob and tube wiring. So if they want additional receptacles or lights or what have you, you can't extend from a knob and tube branch circuit to feed additional wiring, really. Today are using traditional wiring methods anyways. You can't connect cable with a bond conductor to that. Any new receptacles would be required to be protected by GFCI, because I don't believe you can buy 2-prong receptacles anymore, but we would not ask for somebody to rewire their home that they have knob and tube. We would just want to make sure that if they have 3-prong devices, that they're protected by a combination GFCI. I'm going to pass this one over to John because he may know more about it. I don't believe we've actually dealt with this yet. We've heard about it, but I don't think we've thought about it within our group anyways. What is ESA's approach to vehicle-to-grid installation? Do you have any thoughts, John?
Oh boy, that's not here yet, but the vehicle-to-grid is almost like a PV system or an energy storage system, essentially, that can export power to the grid that it doesn't need. So the electric vehicle charging equipment can act in both directions. It can either charge a vehicle or take energy out of the vehicle's batteries and send it to the grid. Presumably the utility would be willing to pay you for that. It's in the works. There's discussions at CSA to develop some standards around it. The vehicle charger would have to be certified for grid interconnection, just like a photovoltaic inverter has to be. So it would actually be an interconnected power production source. The fact that the energy is stored in the vehicle's batteries doesn't make it any different than stationary batteries on an energy storage system. How soon we'll see any of that, I really don't know. The complications of utilities monitoring how much energy you have available and how much they're willing to pay you for it and how badly they need it right now, it's mind-boggling in complexity. But conceptually, it's just an energy storage system on wheels, basically.
Yeah, thanks, John. We were asked, is it acceptable to use aluminum conductors in dwelling units? Yes, it is. Any devices or Products used with the aluminum conductors would have to be terminated in an approved manner. So you would either have to pigtail at all your receptacles and switches or use ones that are rated for aluminum. It's very common to use aluminum for the service conductors in dwelling units. And I think even larger branch circuits are some of the larger ones like stove plugs maybe. I don't know. Have you seen any of that, John?
Yeah, I think you can still get a stove cable in aluminum, and maybe for larger loads like I don't know, an electric furnace if you happen to have that. I mean, theoretically you could wire the whole house in aluminum, but good luck trying to buy branch wiring of aluminum of any smaller than, you know, than at least number 8. So, but the code never actually outlawed or banned aluminum wiring.
Yep. So here's a question that might get a chuckle out of John. So that we were asked, somebody asked if the drywall was removed in the kitchen, do you have to install a GFCI near the sink? Is this correct? And at this time, that's a very nuanced question. And if you're not fundamentally changing the layout of your kitchen, let's say, hypothetically speaking, you're just, you know, replacing countertops and so on and backsplashes, and you accidentally or purposefully removed the drywall in the process, you do not need to replace the receptacle. If you're laying out your kitchen and you have adequate coverage, then you would you might need to add additional receptacles. But again, if it's an existing receptacle, we normally don't apply the code retroactively. Any additional thoughts, John?
Yeah, and I think this also touches on, if the wall is open, do you have to meet current code requirements for receptacles in the wall?
That's why I thought you might smile, because we're trying to grapple with this and provide written direction for the.
There's no code-based answer to that. Obviously, it would be the right thing to do if someone's renovating the house and the walls are stripped open. Why not add receptacles as the code would require today? But it's not like the code defines it that way. It just lays out what the requirements are today, and this is how you wire a house. That's it. It doesn't get into the nuances of if you ripped open a wall or not, or was it existing, or is it a renovation or new construction. So some judgment always has to be used on these. Is it a restoration after a flood, after a fire? Did they rip down the drywall in the kitchen because it's deteriorated and needs to be replaced and retiled or something? It's really separate from the electrical issue. But no, there's really no straightforward code-based answer to that.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of great questions. We really, really appreciate everybody's input. We're going to try to address as many of them as we can, but as you can see, we've left up the contact number for all the technical advisors. So if we didn't get to your question, I sincerely apologize, but I think we're almost at the end of our presentation. I don't know that there's much more that we can really touch on. We were asked about homeowners quite a bit. Homeowners can really, if they're changing light switches, receptacles, devices, the only thing that 2005 exempts them from requiring a notification, I believe, is a light fixture. I think receptacles, they need to apply for notification. If an LEC is consulting, they are not doing electrical work, so they would not need a notification. If they're physically doing electrical work, then they will require a notification. But if they're just providing sort of technical support or consultation services, which is within their purview, then they would not need a notification. Thank you so much, everyone that attended, and for all the fantastic questions. As you can, I'm sure know, John and I could sit and chat about code stuff all day. So we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and we hope that you all have a fantastic holiday season and look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, and likewise for myself. Thanks, everyone. It was great to speak to such a large audience all at once in this format. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Apologies. Thank you very much. Well, thank you to Keith and John. This has been a great presentation. I'm happy to see so many questions that have been answered. It's been really, truly amazing technical Q&A session. This concludes our official program. I want to thank everybody else for participation and tell you that I couldn't be more optimistic as we move into the future. Thank you once again for your contributions to our success, and I look forward to working with each of you in the coming year. Again, if you have any questions or concerns or require additional information, please don't hesitate to contact us through our website or through emailing licensingmatters@electricalsafety.on.ca. You have our social media. Please visit often. Please leave your comments. Recording of this presentation will be posted on the ESA website. And again, this has been great to have you all here today. Thank you everybody for attending. Stay safe, stay healthy, and happy holidays to all.